Welcome, fellow Toastmasters and our guests. This meeting of online presenters has begun. Now, guests, please note that in order to become a member of our club, you must be a current or former active member of Toastmasters International and have completed at least 6 Toastmasters official speeches, or alternately, if you have substantial relevant presentation experience, you may apply for membership after demonstrating your abilities in a 2 to 3 minute speech delivered during one of our club meetings. Our requests for membership are subject to approval by the members of our club. If you have not already done so, please change your panel to ensure it shows your name and your role if you have one. Right-click, select rename to do so. We have members and guests from many countries throughout the world. Thus, as a professional organization, we ask that you please be aware of language or word usage that may be considered offensive or otherwise insensitive due to cultural differences. Please note, the meeting is being recorded. Go to our Facebook page, engage and share, because your video and audio contribution will be used for club marketing purposes. Now, please remain muted when you are not speaking. We don't want to disturb anyone else. He's back. I don't think it was a take a while guess. I do believe it's that he did such a good job that when the time came to step in, we had to ask him to rewind, do it again. By the way, this happened in daylight savings time, so we didn't just go back in time. We went back in date. But help us welcome our discombobulated president on theme to take a wild guess, David Carr.
Well, Jim Barber explained to me that Take a Wild Guess Day is also tax day. And that makes sense in terms of how I did my taxes. It's tax day in the United States, for those of you who are not United Statians. But they haven't put me in jail yet, so I guess I've got it in the ballpark most years. My name is David Carr. I was the president of this club back in 2017 when we got started, and came back again this year to lead things off. But I have a great team behind me and around me and above me and to the next door to me. The person who most is going to be responsible for the success of this meeting is our Toastmaster of the day, Jim Barber. Jim Barber, it's all yours.
I'm the person that's most in charge of the success of this meeting. Boy, are we in trouble. My fellow Toastmasters, thank you, Mr. President. My fellow Toastmasters, I signed up to be Toastmaster of the evening, largely because nobody else showed an interest in being Toastmaster, so I figured I would do it. And then I was faced with the challenge of coming up with a theme. To do a theme, I looked at the calendar to see what the day was, and once I saw that it was April the 15th, at least for those people in the United States or in the Western Hemisphere at this time, that cleared it up for me, because everybody knows what April 15 means. It's National Take a Wild Guess Day. Now, actually, it surprises me that some people don't know that April 15th is National Take a Wild Guess Day, but I do know, because I created National Take a Wild Guess Day about 20 years ago. And this may come as a bit of a surprise to some people. You can also form your own holiday. It's official. It's on Chase's calendar of events, which Graham is probably familiar with it. At least in the United States, the Chase's is the place where all of the official holidays are described. And in order to be listed in Chase's, really all you have to do is to just tell them that you have a day. And if you can provide substantial documentation, which consists of about 100 words or less, describing that you have that day, then by George, there's a good chance that they will list you in the next publication of Chase's calendar of events. And you do that by going to, if it's not hidden by my name there, the URL that's at the bottom of the page. I can't read it right now, but it's there. Go to that page, fill out the little form, and they don't accept birthdays. Sorry about that, but that's not considered an official holiday. And they don't allow blatant self-promotion. So if you've written a book, this is not your way of promoting your book. However, you can promote the subject of your book. So you declare a day or a week or a month and put it out there describing what that day is, and that gives you, your name is associated with that day. And for example, there was a news article in a blog entry, a news blog in India today that talked about National Take a Wild Guess Day, and they listed me as the official expert on taking a wild guess day. So this is not exactly a tip of the day, it's just a little kind of optional extra. But if you've ever wanted to do something kind of fun and a little bit off weird, then go to Chase's and created your own day. I have a couple of days listed in Chase's, and it's a lot of fun, something to play with. Anyway, that's my tip of the day, and that's my theme of the day. And let's get to more serious topics. For example, do we have a tip of the day other than the one that I just gave you? Nothing was listed on the agenda, then I assume we do not. In that case, take my tip as a tip, go to Chase's and create your own holiday, your own week, day, or month, and in honor of you. It's a fun thing to do. For those of you that are interested in more Toastmastery things, let's look at our various supporting roles for this meeting, the people that are doing the hard work. For example, Antoinette Trim is the Wizard of Oz. She is our counter this evening. Antoinette, what will you be doing?
Oh boy, it is so simple. I will be tracking clutch words. People who are using clutch words, for example, and even unusual songs, and also extremely long pauses. And I'll be able to give a report as soon as I'm told to do so. So back to you.
And I will be telling you to do so or asking you to do so at the end of the meeting. Thank you, Antoinette. Actually, I won't be doing it. David Carr will be doing it, but you will be asked at the end of the meeting. Thank you. Our grammarian this evening is Ruth Ellen, but I think Ruth Ellen has vanished since I last saw her. Anybody know the status of Ruth Ellen? Is she here? And I don't see her.
She's gone. She'll be back, we hope.
Ah, okay. Then Ruth Ellen will be the grammarian this evening.
It's Ruth now.
There she is. Okay. Hi, Ruth Ellen. We were just talking about you. You are the grammarian this evening. Would you care to tell us what you're going to be doing?
So I'll be listening out to anything that holds our interest. Language is such an important tool to communicate and connect with other people. And so today I'll be really listening out for those words that help us to do that, make that connection with more ease, those interesting words that kind of sometimes bring up a memory for us as well. So this is an important part of being a public speaker. It helps us to connect with our audience, but also hold their attention. And so as a grammarian, my job is to literally look out for those words, language use, sometimes not non-language use as well.
Great. Thank you, Ruth Ellen. You're going to make sure that all of us talk good. I appreciate that. Our official stalker. We have an official stalker for the meeting, and we actually call it, though, a watcher, is Sherry Blake. Sherry, what will you be watching tonight?
Well, that's a wonderful way of describing the position. So I will be stalking you all. I will be just watching to see your expressions, to make sure that everyone is paying attention, no one is on their phones, just looking for engagement, seeing if everyone's interested, and checking out your backgrounds. Back to you.
Great. Thank you, Sherry. Okay. Our chat monitor this evening is one of our newer members, kind of a beginner, but we're going to help him along and maybe he can pull this off. Our chat monitor this evening is none other than David F. Carr. David F., what are you going to be doing this evening?
I'll be paying attention to the back channel communications. If anything interesting or concerning pops up there, I will report at the the appropriate points in the meeting.
Great. Thank
Mr.
you, sir.
Toastmaster.
All right. And finally, perhaps the most important role of the evening is the vote counter, Carolina Ramirez. Carolina, what will you be doing this evening and how will you be doing it?
I will be the timer and the vote counter. As
Ah.
a timer, as a
Oh,
timer,
I skipped the timer. I beg your pardon, but thank you. That too.
yes, as a timer, my role is to keep track of time for the speeches and evaluations. When I show the green card behind me, it means that the speaker has 2 minutes left for speeches and 1 minute left for evaluations. When I show the yellow card, you should be aware that your time will be up soon. Only 1 minute left for speeches and 30 seconds left for evaluations. And when I show the red card, it means that your time is up. And be careful because after 30 seconds to finish your speech, be careful because after 30 seconds, when I show the red card, you can be disqualified if you continue. And as vote counter, I will put a link in the chat and you could vote for we can vote for your favorite prepared speaker, impromptu speaker, and for your favorite evaluator. Back to you, Jim.
Thank you very much. Double duty, Carolina. Appreciate that. Okay, and our times, by the way, I want to make sure that these are right. Andriy, 18 to 22 minutes. Is that correct? And let's see, Traca, I believe it's 4 to 6. Yes, it is. 4 to 6, Traca? It is. Okay. Madam Timer, you now have the times. I don't think I skipped anybody else. I think we've done everything. Great. Let's move to the fun part of the meeting then. Okay. Our first speaker this evening is Andriy Smolenko. And let's see. Yes. Andriy is speaking from the Engaging Humor Level 5, demonstrating expertise. Deliver your message with humor. And his introduction goes as follows. Children, we love them. Sometimes we dislike them, but we love them more. Please help me welcome, talking about children, Andriy Smolenko.
You know, when the babies are born, I think they all born the same. Looking like this, like a red cabbage. And please, please don't tell me this is not true. I know it's true because I've had it twice. I had it with my baby daughter who was born 17 years ago. And I had it with my baby boy son who was born 12 years ago. And, you know, when you just have it in your hands and you anticipating that beautiful baby boy or girl will be born, and then the cabbage just came out and you don't know what to do. You don't know how to behave. And it wasn't what I wanted, but looks like I gotta get stuck with this for the rest of my life. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you a question. Do you think newly born babies look cute? And please write your answer in the chat box. Of course, many of you can say yes. Many of you, some of you perhaps can say no, but what I'm looking for is just a little bit more creative answer. Carolina, okay. No, baby's not cute for Carolina. Mine did, Johnny, thank you. We have Ruth Ellen, still gathering data. Okay, thank you very much. Definitely cute. And we have Sherry Blake, they look interesting. And of course, Toastmaster of the day, Jim Barber, I will be brave. No, ugly as sin. Well, excellent. It's nice to see variety of ideas and just opinions in our club. For some, baby's cute, for some not, and some of them are sin. Well, to me personally, I can put up with yes, no, or any sorts of answer at all. But the one thing I believe we all can agree on, and that thing is that the baby poo is the worst thing you can ever encounter in your life. I guarantee you that. I understand some of us, like Ruth Allen, still gathering evidence. Ruth, this is for you. The baby poo is absolutely horrible thing to happen to a human being. At the same time, there are fun parts of parenthood. I enjoy many of them. Some of the things, for example, that I enjoy is the question, big, massive question. Who is your favorite child? And how do you answer? Sometimes I just have no idea, but perhaps you, my fellow online presenters, could help me with that. I just would like to ask Carolina Ramirez, please tell me, so if you were asked that question, how would you answer that?
I don't have a favorite child.
Okay, thank you. Quite a sensible answer. I really like that. And of course, I got to ask Jim Barber, since he mentioned that the children are the scene. So Jim, who is your favorite child?
I don't have any children, but if I did have children, it would be fairly easy to identify which one was my favorite, and that would be the one that offered me the bigger bribe.
Thank you very much, Jim. I think it's something mine already grown up, but I can steal your answer. Really like that. Sherry Blake, if you were asked that question, who is your favorite child? How would you answer?
Who is my favorite child? My son. Why wouldn't he be my favorite child? Is this just a general question of any
Let's
child?
say if you had more than one.
See, in this case, I don't. So I can easily say it's my son. Okay, so if I had more than one child and someone asked me who was my favorite, I would have to make sure that my children didn't hear me tell this person who was my favorite, but it probably would be the one who makes me smile every day, who doesn't get on my nerves, who does all of his or her chores, gets his or her homework done, the good child.
Oh, yes.
So-called the good.
Certainly I do. Well, thank you, Sherry. You see, I like them ideas. You see, well, I feel sorry that I didn't join Toastmasters 17 years ago. Then it would be so much easier for me to answer all those tricky questions. Well, yes, apart from a child's and whose favorite child game, we play other games as well. We play riddles. Okay. For example, riddles. Oh, I love them. And we start with the basic one. What is yours mostly used by others? What is yours but mostly used by others? So if you know the answer to this question, please type it in the chat box. What is your, oh no, that was just so obvious. Graham Carnes, your name. Money, answer that. Yes. I really like that question as well. It's slightly away from ordinary, but it's true. And Graham Carnes continues, I love that jokes. Well, yes, it could be money, it could be your name. And let's try a little bit more. What goes up but never comes back down? Please, again, write your answers in the chat box. Carolina, Jim Barber put it down, taxes. Carolina, son, and Traca, Trump's ego, and Samuel, cost of raising a child. Right, well, the answer I have here is the age. Our age goes up, but never comes back down. You see, there are so many different ideas and varieties you can answer those questions. But what can be even better than those questions? I would say it's a prank. Oh, yes. Just somehow, I love to play pranks on my children. And one of the best stories, and I can tell you, it was 1st of April, Fool's Day, International Fool's Day. Traditional, my daughter, it was Saturday morning, and then I burst into her room. Sophia, wake up. Your teacher called me last night. I forgot to tell you. You got to get ready for school. There is the special selection going on. And I play my role really well. So she went, oh, Daddy, how could it happen? And she got her rucksack. She got her school uniform. She went, so can you take me to the tram stop, please? And me and her brother, we just burst out of laughing. But yes, we had some fun. It's one of the pranks we play. But my daughter came back to me a few days later with another prank. I'm not sure if I can disclose what happened to me. Perhaps that would be another story. If you like, I'll tell you that later. Nevertheless, my daughter does business studies in her college, or secondary school, we call it in England, and she came back to me a few days after the prank and said, Dad, I know exactly how we in the UK use, how we use the United States money. Being a businessman, I was really, really curious to know. So please tell me, and what do we do with USA money? I would like to have some of that. But just imagine, when we receive a grant from the United States, okay, the butcher gets £10,000. Then butcher pays off his debt to the baker, because baker helped him with his wedding. And then baker gets £10,000 and takes that money to the event organizer, because event organizer helped him to organize the wedding. And then event organizer thinking, I have a debt before butcher. So he takes £10,000 back to the butcher thinking, look, I just don't need this money anymore. So send it back to the United States. And this is how we prosper, using other countries' money, spinning them around, and just giving them back. Well, yes, it's one of the stories my daughter came up with. However, the prank I told you about, I tell you now, I don't want another speech. I'll just give it to you as it is. My daughter is 16, and as a single dad, sometimes I struggle to have those important conversations about the girls growing and the boys growing and so on. And then just a few weeks ago, we sat at the dinner table, we had our tea. Strangely enough, in England, dinner is called tea. You know that. It's one thing. So we were having our tea, and my daughter said, Dad, look, I think I'm late. If you know what I mean by that, coming back to the red cabbage, coming back to the poo and all the pranks and all those things that happen in the 16 years of her life, just come flashing through my face. I didn't know what to say. I was lost for words. And then I start mumbling, babbling, said, well, how are you feeling? And so on and so on. Because it happened first time in my life. And then she looked at me and said, Dad, don't worry. I'm not sexually active. It's like, Thank you very much for that. But hey, she paid back, and she paid back really, really well. You see, sometimes I do bring Toastmasters into my family life. They know, children know, they're asleep right now because it's say 1:10 in the morning on Tuesday, but they can probably hear me talking quite loudly. And so I try to explain what I do. But one thing, yes, I really, really like to introduce to my son when he gets to the appropriate age. Let's put it that way. And that thing is called speed dating and Toastmasters. And the reason is, does anyone know what the speed dating is? If you do, just lift your hand up. So I know how, well, brilliant. So most of the people do, some don't. So I just put it into a little perspective. It's a room full of young or not very young ladies and gentlemen who have between 2 to 3 minutes to impress each other. And then at the end of that exercise, they just sit from one table into another, one table into another, one table into another. So in about, I don't know, maybe half an hour, you have 10 partners to talk to and impress on them. And when I went to the speed dating, I was shaking, I was scared. I didn't know what to do, but then I find out about the format and table topics. Boom! So I know what to do. And I did. And at the end of the evening, luckily, I had a number of contacts because the organizer shared them at the end of the meeting. So if you want, you can continue doing something else. I think that skill, my son, when he gets to the appropriate age, are going to appreciate. I just already imagine me and him going to a few Toastmasters meeting and then, hey, speed dating. Of course, what else can we share between father and son? Maybe that thing as well. But speaking of the children and them growing, my daughter is turning 17 in September. And in the UK, the legal age where children or young adults can drive and can get insurance is 17. So she's already started saving her pocket money on that, or mostly my money on that. But when she turns 17, I just really want her to understand that driving is not just that easy. Some people can get themselves very deep into the hot water with speeding offenses. Yes. Has any one of us ever been caught speeding? My fellow online presenters, please, please lift your hand up. I knew it. I knew I wasn't the only one. And in the UK, how it works. So for example, if you drive in a 30-mile-per-hour zone and you increase your speed limits by 10%, which is 3 miles, so 33 miles per hour, they can let you get away with it, kind of get away. It means you don't get any points on your driving license, but you have to attend the driving safe course. And it's nuisance, and it's pain, but you do it. You have to take a day off work. You have to pay about £100, which is maybe $120. And the worst thing of that is humiliation. Humiliation, you feel yourself as an offender. You feel that you've done something wrong, and you have to get inside of that building, looking around, then probably everybody knows. Everyone definitely knows that I have committed that crime. And guess what? On my experience, when I went to such a speeders offenders course, a young lady, she was a member of a staff in a hotel where that kind of events hold. I was presented well and I arrived early, and she just looked at me and said, Are you with those speeding offenders? I was a bit shocked by that, honestly. Well, yes, I was. But then, when all the offenders, pregnant women, men with beards, elderly ladies, some people in suits start flooding into the room, I felt, well, it's not that bad. I'm one of them. So the life can be all right. But it's something I really want to tell my daughter when she gets to that age. My daughter, I love her. My son as well. But I think my son has a bit better sense of humor than my daughter. Perhaps he's a little bit more favorite in that regard. But daughter is nicer. So why is that so important? There we go. Boom. The importance of his sense of humor is that I'm Ukrainian, living in Manchester, and you can probably hear my Eastern European accent. I know I try to disguise that, but then I decided to wear it with pride. And from time to time, between me and my son, we can have a conversation like that. Come on, son, get up from your bed. Get your school uniform on and go to school. And then my son goes, all right, Dad, I will get up, only after you make me some tea. And we just talk. Our daughter just doesn't get involved in what's going on. We play in a bit of Eastern European accents, a bit of Italian, and things going right. So thinking about the cabbage. And now through all that time that I enjoy my two kids, they are born red like a cabbage, but then they make my life shining as a sun. So please remember the children. We love them. Sometimes we dislike them, but we love them all. Back to you, Jim Barber.
Thank you so much, Andriy. Yes, thank you indeed. Thank you from the children. Thank you from the parents. Thank you from all of us. A great presentation. Okay, our next presentation, we go from an 18 to 22-minute presentation to one of the shorter sanctioned presentations by Toastmasters, but one of my absolute favorites, the icebreaker. And this evening, as our giving her icebreaker, we have Traca Savadogo. Is that anywhere close? It's close. Okay, thank you. Traca Savadogo is going to be speaking from Engaging Humor Level 5. Engaging Humor Level 5, demonstrating expertise, 4 to 6 minutes. Grab the mic. And here we go. Traca is what you might call a reluctant speaker. The journey from shying away from the spotlight to embracing the stage was neither straight nor easy. Along the way, she discovered that unexpected challenges can help us discover hidden strengths and why sometimes the best thing we can do is to step out of our comfort zones. Please help me welcome Traca Savadogo. Tracy.
Oh, hold on. What?
Traca, I screwed it up. Traca, please help me welcome Traca.
Thank you. Hold on just one second. Hi, everyone. So thank you so much. I used to organize events all the time. I would book speakers and have and start all kinds of events. And then one day a dear friend of mine said, it's time you grab the mic. You actually have something to say. I wasn't sure about that, but she definitely planted the seed for something that came later.
And here's what came. TEDx Seattle is one of the premier TEDx events in the world. 2 of the top 10 TEDx talks of all time came from the Seattle TEDx stage. And one day I got a phone call and they said that I was shortlisted to participate in the upcoming TEDx event. And I said, I don't have a big idea. What are you talking about? No, I'm not going to do this. And my friend said, are you sure? And I realized that if I didn't take this opportunity and it never came along again, it would be a deathbed regret. So I said yes. And what happened from there is I ended up seeing a therapist 3 hours a week. And I also hired a coach. This is the actual venue where I did my talk, and it has a seating capacity of 3,000 people. And I had never given a talk in my life. I never wrote a speech. And it was one of the most difficult things I've ever done in my life. And to the point where I procrastinated so bad that the organizer reached out to me and said, if you don't have your speech ready in 2 days, I'm going to take you off the agenda. Well, somehow I got it all together. And as they were introducing me, over here on the right-hand side of the stage, I'm waiting in the wings. And a little known secret is that I had never successfully given my talk from beginning to end until I stepped out on that red dot. I put my hand on a velvet drape and I said, I made a promise to myself, no matter how badly this goes, I promise I won't kill myself. So I went out on that red dot, I gave my talk, I walked off the stage, and it took me a week to recover from it. 2 months later, I get a text from a friend of mine and she's like, congratulations. Like, what are you talking about? Anybody know this guy? Tim Ferriss, #1 best-selling author of 5 books, and he has one of the top podcasts in the world. Yeah, he found my TEDx talk and shared it with his entire social media on every single platform. 6 million followers, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. I'm like, oh my gosh, I was hoping I would do my TEDx talk and just fade into the background, but no, my life was changed forever thanks to Tim Ferriss. This guy reached out to me. Peter Winnick runs an organization called Thought Leadership Leverage. He helps authors and other thought leaders develop their craft and develop multi-million-dollar businesses around their ideas. Peter's like, you got the secret sauce. I've talked to him several times. I'm like, you're crazy. No, I'm going to go. I'm not doing this. I'm going to go get a real job. And by the way, will you give me a reference? He's like, sure, I will. Here's what he said about me. I was like, no, dude, I put the email away and I was just like, no, we're not doing this. Then a friend of mine runs a conference and she reached out to me. She said, listen, okay, COVID had just started, like had been in swing about 6 months. Then we had race riots going on in Seattle. It was just a mess. And she's like, listen, I need you to open this 5-day conference and bring a sense of community together. Your talk is on why you should regularly talk with strangers. I want you to help create that vibe for my conference. I'm like, okay, I'll do my very best. 3 days into the conference, she reached back out to me. She's like, you know what? I'm so impressed. Can you do the closing keynote too? I'm like, oh my gosh. Again, I slept for a week after this happened. Then other organizations started reaching out to me. Hey, can you come present at my organization? Microsoft, Starbucks, BECU is the 4th largest credit union in America. Business schools at Columbia and the University of Washington, Amazon and Mensa, and some of them actually paid handsomely. I'm like, what do these people know that I don't? What if I actually got over my fear and became a paid professional speaker? What if? Then I met this guy. His name is Kevin Snyder, and he wrote a book called Paid to Speak. And he also was an accredited speaker. He's like, listen, you got to get over that. You got to join Toastmasters, get in the game and get over it. And so I found a list of all of the clubs online that are advanced. And I started I built out this spreadsheet. I started going to them. I'm like, okay, what do I not know? How can I find more people that can help me along the journey? And then I would introduce myself saying, I aspire to be an accredited speaker. I didn't know exactly what that meant, but that's part of my introduction. And then this guy, Stan, reached out to me in the DMs and he's like, listen, here's the 3 clubs that I've vetted. You should totally look at join them. And I did. Then Stan said to me, he's like, listen, in order to be a better speaker, you need to give better evaluations. And so here's a link, a YouTube link. I want you to study up on this. I was like, Stan, what is this with evaluations? He's like, listen, you can't understand how good a speech is until you can critique it and actually put it into words. As soon as you master this skill, you'll be better at giving speeches. I'm like, okay. So I studied, and I've been doing evaluations over the last couple months trying to get better. So the other thing I did is I joined a bunch of clubs. I am like an immersive learner. I joined several clubs. I'm in a Toastmaster club 7 days a week trying to get better at my craft. And then finally, I am so excited about honing my craft. I'm glad to be in company with you folks so that I can get better and more comfortable and more confident about grabbing the mic. I can now actually deliver a talk like this and I'm not going to sleep for a week. So day by day, I'm getting better and I'm so grateful to be in your company. Thank you very much. Toastmaster, back to you.
Thank you, Traca. And I can tell you that the feeling is mutual. We are grateful to have you as a member of Online Presenters. Thank you, and we look forward to many, many, many years of our working together. Great. Madam Timer, how did our 2 speakers do?
Jim, Andriy, 19 minutes and 36 seconds qualified, and Traca, 7 minutes disqualified.
Oh, okay. That happens. Andriy, it looks like you've got a pretty good shot at winning the best speaker tonight. Good for you. Go for it. All right. Something you can tell your children about. All right. We do not have any prospective member speeches tonight, I believe. Is that correct? Okay, I don't stand corrected. So we get to move to table topics. We heard from a couple of prepared speeches. Now is our opportunity to hear some unprepared speeches. Our table topics master this evening, Traca described herself as a reluctant speaker. That is also a good description of our table topics master this evening. Our table topics master is kind of shy, withdrawn. You normally find her in the corner, doesn't like to kind of come out and be the center of attention. But nevertheless, we're going to coax her into the spotlight this evening as she prepares our table topics presenters. Please help me welcome the one, the only, Joni Laidlaw.
Thank you, our Toastmaster of the day. Table topics. It's the part of the meeting where you get to practice your speed dating skills. So if you're like me, a wallflowered introvert who spends way too much time in a dark room by themselves, and you absolutely despise small talk and has been known to speak from sunup to sundown on any random topic, tangents exist. This is a time where we practice how to get all those big thoughts nicely condensed so that Andriy can tell you you'll get picked. Now, it's important to remember that for table topics, it's 1 to 2 minutes that you will be speaking for. At Online Presenters, normally for regular meetings, it's persons who don't have a role on the agenda, but everyone is fair game for me today. We're going to start with, what do you speculate on most? And I'm going to ask that one to Sam. Samuel, what do you speculate on most?
I'm sorry, you said what do I speculate on most? Okay. Very good. Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Table Topic Master. What do I speculate the most on? There's a lot. There's a lot. When you look at the economy, you look at the wars that we see across the world, we see quite a lot of things that bring uncertainty in life. Personally, I speculate the most on finances, the economy, because I'm an accountant. I work in finance. I also work in the insurance industry. So in insurance, we take on a lot of risk. And with that risk, you're exposed to things like COVID, for example. You're exposed to hurricanes, to quite a number of things across the world, which have an economic impact. So personally, I speculate most on the economy as it pertains to my employer and my employment within that organization, as well from a financial perspective, a personal perspective. The economy has a big role in my future as well. So that's why it's what I speculate the most on. Back to you, Madam Table Topic Master.
Thank you, Samuel. And I get that you speculate on the economy because it's your job, but most of us speculate because the economy is how we will survive, live, exist. So I can empathize with what you speculate on the most. And there you go. I've said speculate 5 times. I think I have covered it, but I'm going to throw in one speculation just to make sure I get the conjugation. Next, I am going to ask, tell me of a time you took a wild guess and it worked out. I'm going to ask Ruth Ellen that question. Tell me a time you took a wild guess and it worked out.
This is a challenging question. Thank you, Joni. I tend to not take guesses because oftentimes I am wrong. From an early time in childhood, I tried to guess many things, got them wrong. So as an adult, haven't guessed many things. I don't guess lottery numbers. I don't guess if somebody's going to call me. I don't guess if somebody's going to turn up for things, because guessing almost is like placing a bet on something, knowing that you're likely to lose. So I don't do it. However, saying that, I say the word I guess a lot, even though I don't guess. So it's interesting. In an ideal world, I'd want to be able to say, I guess, because I guess it comes back to your gut, like remembering actually there's something inside there that you should trust. But maybe it's just the word I guess that's the challenge. And more so, I'm going to go with my gut. That is the language I want to use moving forward. So thank you for the question.
Your gut or your intuition is what guides your I guess. I know that from a Caribbean background, we share that. We learn to not listen to our intuition. Very often we have a bunch of adults who tell us, no, don't. But if you keep following it, I can guarantee you might be saying, I guess, because you want to speculate on how things work out while trusting your gut. But thank you so much for that answer. And that segues into, tell me of a time you took a wild guess and it didn't work out. And I'm going to ask that to Sherry.
Thank you so much for that question, Table Topic Master. So a time where I took a wild guess and it didn't work out. Okay, so here's the story. I recently competed in the District 83 international contest. So there were 7 division contests, and I attended all of them just to get a preview of all of the contestants that would be going on to the District 83 contest. So yeah, I was stalking them, being sneaky. Well, I shouldn't say sneaky, but just, attending to see what was going on. And I kind of made my prediction. I said, I think these 3 are good. They're going to be my competition. And I need to step up my game. So I competed this Saturday. And after watching the person who I thought would be the front runner, I said, he didn't bring his game tonight. I also stepped out of the room because as I sat there, my brain just couldn't process my speech. I kept forgetting the beginning of my speech, so I had to go outside the room and center myself. So even though I didn't listen to the other speeches, I had previously listened to the speeches. So I said, that person who I thought was the front runner, I said, he didn't bring it. I was right, because he didn't place. So I said, yes, that means I can place either first, second, or third. It didn't turn out that way for me. I didn't place at all. Two people who placed, I thought they would place, but then another person I didn't think would, and he did. So that's where I thought I would place and did not. Back to you, Table Topics Master.
Thank you for your response. And sometimes how we assume things will go isn't always how it is. We sometimes will take a wild guess as to how we perceive that things will go, but I will give you something to make you feel even better. You came first behind the third person, depending on where you place. My son taught me that's how you make a positive spin on things. You didn't come third, you came first, or second or third, wherever you want, but you placed behind the person who came third. There you go. That's a perspective. But thank you for that response. That allows me to segue into, we have a phrase here that says, when you assume, you make an asterisk of you and me. Jim Barber, when you assume, you make an asterisk of you and me. Please elaborate.
Well, Madam Topics Master, I want to know why when you come, the first question that you have that involves an asterisk, you call on me. Why am I the go-to person for an asterisk question? That's what I want to know. But when you assume, you make an asterisk out of you and me. I believe that. I believe that wholeheartedly. Not that there's anything wrong with assuming. If you think about it, assuming is simply operating on insufficient data. If you know something for an absolute fact, that's great. But if you don't, you have to assume. Otherwise, you just can't work. And actually, when you get right down to it, we know very, very little as an absolute fact. So most everything we have to assume. That's okay. Assumptions are fine. The problem is, too often we assume the worst, or we assume that something isn't going to work. We're pessimistic in our assumptions. And that is the problem. And that's when assuming makes an asterisk of us all. Excuse me. If we would simply assume the best, if we would assume that the outcome is going to be incredible, that the outcome is going to be remarkable, if we assume that life is going to be good, then we're going to be surprised at how often our assumptions do work out. So I don't have a problem with assumptions. I have a problem with assumptions about the worst. That we should not do. That does indeed make an asterisk of us all. Madam Topics Master.
I agree. And Graham, yes, an assumption is speculating, or another form of speculation. Jim, you were chosen because I knew you could handle a topic about being an asterisk and do it so effectively that you brought it to a Zen moment, which is, it's called pronoia, the opposite of paranoia. So we're not going to be paranoid anymore. We're going to replace it with the view that everything is going to work out. Do I have time for one more question?
Sorry, that was directed at me. That's a good question. Let's see. I would say, unfortunately, no. We're running shy of time, so I probably has to do it.
So overall today, we've learned that if you're going to speculate or assume, ensure that you follow your gut because it teaches you to continue to do that. And we will replace paranoia with pronoia, especially, Samuel, you like this, when it comes to the economy, because right now we are all speculating whether it's our job or not, because we know that sometimes we'll make the assumption and we'll still place better us against ourselves, even if we didn't place with who we thought we wouldn't place in a competition. Back to you, our Toastmaster today.
Thank you, Toastmaster Joni. A wonderful table topic session. And if we can ever coax you out of your shell, I think you're going to be a remarkable Toastmaster. I believe all the times have been posted in the chat, and well as an opportunity for you to vote for the best table topics presenter. So I won't waste any more time. I will relinquish the rest of the meeting to our general evaluator this evening, David F. Card. Take it away, David.
Thank you, Mr. Barber. This is the part of the meeting where our speakers get immediate feedback, and we all should have the opportunity to learn from the feedback that's provided to the speaker. We're going to do that first with our evaluator for Andriy Smolenko, was Graham Cairns. Graham.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator. Thank you, everybody, and particularly, of course, thank you, Andrei. Andrei's presentation, Children, We Love Them. We sometimes dislike them, but we love them more, was meant to be an 18 to 22 minute humorous presentation, the sort of thing that would be given perhaps as an after dinner speech. This is one of the longer presentations that we're asked to do in certain paths. In some paths, you have to do a high performance leadership project. In others, you're asked to do an 18 to 22 minute keynote length presentation. And I want to begin by saying what I really liked about Andrei's presentation. I thought this was a really nice way to link a series of otherwise disconnected stories about children and growing up, but he linked them well. And one of the things that Andrei asked me to look for specifically in this evaluation was whether he had transitioned effectively from one story to the next. And I think in general terms, he did. There were a couple of times where the links weren't quite as strong as they might have been, but I'll give you one example where it was. He'd been talking about his daughter learning to drive, and he used that daughter learning to drive to move into a story about going and facing a group of, or being forced in with a group of speeders, and then came back to, but this is something that I am going to talk to my daughter about. Talking of my daughter, I love her dearly, and I also love my son, but they are different. And then he went on to talk about how his son mocks his accent. That was a really nice transition. There were a couple of others that weren't quite as effective. So I would suggest, Andrei, go back to the presentation, watch the recording, and watch yourself at those transitions and think, how might I have done that transition better? Why did that one not work as well as this one? I also thought the use of slides was fun. There were a lot of really good slides that were being presented by Andrei today. There is an observation I would make to Andrei, though, and we were talking before the meeting began with Traca about how to put yourself, for example, into the slides. And Andrei did that well tonight, except that the slides were so large that in some cases, we actually not only lost Andrei's gestures, but we actually lost the side of his face a couple of times. So you may wish to consider making the slides slightly smaller or shifting yourself further away from the center so that the slides don't dominate you. But I really did like the slides. I thought they were quite effective. One final observation, and not just for Andrei, but for everybody. Andrei was asking open-ended questions which sometimes went off the rails. It can be dangerous to ask questions if you don't know what the answer is. So, for example, Andrei might have said, Here's a question for those of you who've got more than one child. Can I get a show of hands? Who's got more than one child? Then you can ask those people, do you have a favorite child? Because there was always a risk that you're going to be asking somebody about their children and they may not be able to have children, and that could be difficult for both of you. So always look for a way to make sure that you know the answer to the question, or at least you know you're going to get the sort of response that you want before asking. There will be more in the written evaluation, which I'll send you. I enjoyed this presentation. I laughed quite a few times. Your transitions were well. Just a couple of minor points I think will improve this immensely. Mr. General Evaluator.
All right. Thank you, Graham. Our next evaluator, who will be evaluating Traca's speech, or Traca's icebreaker, is Marianne Grady. Marianne.
Well, good evening, fellow Toastmasters, and especially Traca. Grabbing the mic is always difficult, though it seems you were able to overcome your fears to do it. And not only did you do it, you did it in many crazy big companies, conferences, and TEDx. Oh, that's amazing. You were able to successfully share your fears, deathbed regret, a therapist, a coach, sharing about the secret of the red dot. That was really interesting. And I saw some people commenting in the chat after that. So you really caught people's attention. And I can see why you caught the eye of Tim Ferriss. And now I know he's the author of the 4-Hour Work Week. So he was one of my idols when I was working and doing the 9-to-5 thing. But that exposure you received exposed you to a plethora of opportunities, wonderful opportunities. You even did a short notice closing keynote, and it was because of your secret sauce. In my opinion, you have a very comfortable, confident, relatable speaking style. You have a really friendly demeanor. Those are things as a speaker, they're gold. You do have it, Traca. And I think the only person who doesn't know it is you. So you're like the cowardly lion now. You know, you need some courage. I am going to give you that courage. I'm handing it over to you right now, because do what you do. It's amazing. I do have a few suggestions. And that would be, when you say, like, you're sharing a secret, whisper. Bring your voice down. It's like that old, I don't know if you're old enough to remember when E.F. Hutton talks, people listen, and he always like brings the voice down. And when you whisper, everyone is listening. Another thing that I thought would be helpful was, Kevin Snyder was right. Practice makes perfect. And time yourself, because you didn't do that. And, you know, you were way over time today. And so when people are doing an agenda, timing is important. So please try and stick to your time. And that really means that you have to become a ruthless editor when you're putting your speech together and taking out the most important or putting in the most important things. And I do agree that evaluation is a super important skill that will help you develop your speeches better. So keep that up. Finally, you rushed your ending. Take a moment, make a call to action, use pauses, and then toss back to the Toastmaster of the day. You're really naturally charismatic, and you're so much fun to listen to. I'm so happy that you're a member, and wow, what an introduction to the club. I can't wait for you to grab the mic and speak for the next time. Back to you, General Evaluator.
All right. Thank you, Marianne. Let me ask for a timers report. I think Graham actually went a little bit over. Is that correct?
Yes, he blew it.
That is correct. Graham, 3 minutes and 55 seconds. Marianne, 3 minutes and 10 seconds. Marianne is qualified, Graham don't.
So Graham, were you not able to see the timing lights, or did you just decide you wanted to finish your point?
I wasn't. I had my notes were on the screen and therefore didn't have the timing lights up. It was stupid on my part.
Okay. Well, don't be so harsh. I like this guy. But Caroline, one thing we have done in the past is if you use the raise hand function, it tends to force your video to the upper left-hand corner of the screen. We didn't have that going this time. There's another way where the administrators can do that to make sure everybody can see the timer. But that's kind of awkward too, because it actually freezes all the other little squares in place. And sometimes you wind up with somebody speaking who's actually not on screen because you're not letting Zoom do its kind of automated thing. We had a situation that's come up a few times where somebody is not sharing, or they're not sharing what they think they're sharing. And there's always a tension, a break. Do we interrupt? Do we actually unmic and say, hey, by the way, your stuff's not sharing? Because somebody was trying to post it in the chat. I guess Tracy didn't necessarily see that because she was concentrating on speaking. And it's difficult because sometimes when you interrupt the person, they might be flustered. And even if you let them start over again, you're interrupting the flow of their speech. Maybe I shouldn't worry about that with a TEDx speaker, but still, I thought it was rolling along smoothly enough that maybe the slides actually weren't necessary. So even though this is a club where one of the things we do is practice the use of presentation technologies, sometimes if the slides don't really add that much, if the speech works without the slides, maybe there shouldn't be slides. Because you certainly could say, instead of, do you recognize this guy? Have you heard the name Tim Ferriss? Well, a lot of people have heard the name Tim Ferriss, and so that's still going to make an impression. I think you could have told your story without it, and maybe that would have saved you a few seconds and kept you on time. I don't know. So just a few extra thoughts that I'll throw in here. We ran a well-organized meeting. I was the chat monitor, among other things, and there wasn't necessarily a lot going on in the chat. I'm sorry. That's a situation I never know how to handle, except there's probably spam, so I'm just going to hang up. Anyway, I don't know if you could hear the phone ringing, but the phone was ringing. Anyway, let me call on some of our other functionaries, because there was not a lot going on in the chat other than the regular business of the meeting, certainly encouragement for our speakers, this back and forth about Traca's slides, and Jim did share where you can find out how to get your own holiday. So you might want to go back through and click on that link if you would like to be famous or rearrange the calendar in your own image. We have some other supporting players, though. Let's start with our grammarian, Ruth Ellen. Can you give us a little bit of feedback on what you heard tonight?
Thank you. So I had some really great use of metaphors in Andriy's speech. Things like, flashes before me, people start flooding in. I also heard a circular close, which is really, really great to hear. That's when you refer back to the opening. If you remember the term cabbage being used at the beginning, at the end, it's a really powerful point to close the speech and make it memorable and engaging, as well as really great visuals that helped to do this as well. Tracer used planted the seed, a deathbed regret. Having a deathbed regret is so powerful, and it being weaved into the speech also is helpful from a visual point of view. Joni used the term a wallflower and segue, which is great, and everyone is game. Really powerful just in terms of being able to open the floor up. We also had the word, Mariam shared comfortable, confident, relatable. So using the power of free when talking about Tracer's speech. Really, really great use of yeah, the power of free and just language in general. So I really enjoyed hearing, and it really helped with my active listening. Probably going to do it again because there's so much great richness in this meeting as well. And everyone brought something that helped everyone to stay engaged in some way or another. And that's the power of grammar. Thank you.
Terrific. Let's hear from our watcher, Sherry Blake.
Thank you, David. As I was watching this evening, I noticed that he had great backgrounds, great variety. I love the 100th anniversary backgrounds. I love the blurred backgrounds. Ruth Ellen, I think that your backdrop is very pretty. I noticed that, I think that's a backdrop behind you. So that was a little different, but the backgrounds were great. And of course, Samuel, he's in a, are you in a cafe? He's in the cafe. So I think I loved his background, but I like the fact that we were all centered within our backgrounds. That's one thing that I noticed. And your background, Graham, what is that? A background of a city, right?
That is my hometown, Brisbane.
Okay, so that's a very nice background. Everyone was engaged. I just noticed that everybody was actively listening. They seemed very interested, which I thought was great. As far as Andriy goes, I totally agree with Graham, and I was going to bring up the same thing. I loved your slides. I just loved how you had the slides come down. But yes, I agree that they were just slightly too big because it was cutting off the side of your face. But I definitely enjoyed your slides popping up on the screen. And Joni, I have to say, I loved your background this evening. Your background is typically, it kind of like, you kind of sink into your background normally. But tonight, your posture was great because sometimes you're slanted and you're sinking into your background. But I loved your background tonight. Your posture was great, and you weren't too close to the screen. So I definitely noticed that about you this evening.
Okay, great.
And that's it. Back to David.
All right. And let's make our counters report concise because we are running a little bit close to time.
Thank you, David.
It's not just me trying to get you to be easy on me, but maybe a little bit.
Thank you, David. Carolina, Andrea, Traca, Sherry, Mary, and Ruth, they all used clutch words, but not in excess of 3 times. However, David, he used in excess of 3 clutch words. But as I always keep saying, we are a very professional club, and they want us to continue trying not to use so many clutch words. Back to you, David.
All right. Thank you for that. I think we only had one vote. Carolina, can you give us the results of our table topics?
Sure, the winner is Sherry Blake. Congratulations,
Sherry. See, you came in first. How about that?
I knew somebody was going to say that.
I should have also mentioned that in the chat, Graham shared some guidelines on slides along the lines of, if you're not absolutely sure your technology is working, don't say things like, as you can see here. And if the slides are critical, perhaps because you're going to present a graph with some dense data, make sure you take a moment to say, can everybody see my slides? It's a good insight.
Okay.
With that, I think it's time for me to turn it over to Graham to wrap up with maybe calling. I don't think we have any guests today to call on. So why don't we just talk about roles for next week, and we can stop the recording here.
Cool. Good idea.